Appreciate everybody being here. You're in for a treat. When I came down here, the stock market was off 245 points. Gold was pushing through 900. And we left a message with the chairman that if you wanted to talk, we had something better to do. And Robbie, I think this is probably as auspicious a time for this presentation. Those that read the obituary columns today in the papers noted that Sir Edmund Hillary did what Robbie did in 1953. By the way, accompanied, I have to say this, is the son of a Norwegian with a Norwegian named Norge. We're the first two to manage to reach it to the summit in 1953 of Everest. And he lived a long life. He lived to be 88 years old. So we know that you have a long life ahead of you. And what really was an amazing, brave, incredible thing to do. Now, you will see when you see this presentation, Robbie did one thing that Sir Edmund never even dreamed of when he was at the summit. I'm going to leave that to you. It has to do with one of my favorite games. But I want to just say very briefly something about Sir Edmund Hillary and how modest the people are that take these extraordinary risks, just like my friend Robbie is very modest about the things that he's done. And he's done so many good things. So many incredibly brave things. And this is so 1953, the way it was written up, that I couldn't resist reading it. So here are these two men, Sir Edmund Hillary and Norgate, who reached the top. And according to Sir Edmund Hillary, here's what they did. We shook hands, and then casting, as he put, Anglo-Saxon formalities aside, this is extremely passionate, we thumped each other on the back. We took photographs. We left a crucifix. The expedition leader had not made it in the past. His name is Colonel Hunt. They left a crucifix for him. Mr. Norgate, who is unusual in being a Norwegian Buddhist, buried biscuits and chocolates as an offering to the gods of Everest. We ate a mint cake. We strapped on our oxygen tanks, and we climbed down. One of the greatest events in mountaineering history, probably the greatest events of all time. You will see that Robbie wasn't up there for too long, but a little more adventurous. You couldn't have a nicer man accomplish this. I will note that all the guys in this building, just to be totally sexist here, are saying, I can't wait to see what this guy did. And a lot of women said, he looks kind of cute, so I think I'm going to come.
Well, I'd like to thank President Fisher for inviting me to come down here and do this and share part of the afternoon with all of you. And, this is a part of my message, but it's interesting that you never know what life's going to bring you, because Richard and I have been not close friends, but we've known each other for many, many, many years. And the last thing that I could have imagined in my wildest thoughts is, a guy that was managing equities and a guy that was drilling dry holes on the stage at the Federal Reserve Bank talking about climbing Mount Everest 20 years ago. But you just never know what's out in front of you, and it's all exciting stuff. So maybe that's part of the magic of living. And if anybody knows how to buy an option to live to 88, if I can afford it, I would like to buy that. So y'all let me know if that comes across your radar screen. I would like to recognize some friends and guests of mine today. Let me point out that Tricia Wilson and Cheryl Newman with Wilson Associates here in Dallas are here. We've got Taylor Boyd and Don Wilson, who are both individually in real estate investors and developers here in Dallas, and Susan Byrne with the Westwood Group. Thank you all for coming. I also would like to thank Laurel Brewster for coordinating this and being such a great help to myself and my assistant over the last few weeks. I'd also like to thank the technical team, Henry Soria and Laban Cook, for handling the audiovisual today. But I also want to thank a lot of family and friends and many, many others, and for their thoughts and prayers while I was in Nepal. I left Dallas last March 29th, 2007, and returned June 4th, so I was gone about 10 weeks. And your 10 weeks is a long time. It's not like running a 100-yard sprint in the Olympics or whatever. That's over in a matter of seconds or minutes or even hours. This thing lasted days, weeks, and months. But my expedition leader asked me if there was anything I wanted to do special to the link on his website where we had our daily blog and everything. And I'm going to have that link up on the screen here in a minute. If you want more information after this story I'm going to tell you today, you can actually go to his website and click on the Everest link and read our daily blog and see daily photos and all that. And it gets in a lot more deeper than what I'm going to be able to relay to you today. But he asked me if I wanted to do anything special. I said, no, there might be, if I'm lucky, 20 family and friends checking it out every once in a while. Well, while I was still at base camp in early May, I was informed that there were over 45,000 hits on that link in the month of April before I was even on the upper mountain. And I found out in August that there were over 107,000 hits in the month of May. So I know I don't have that many friends, but I guess there's a lot of armchair climbers around the world, and I think it's one of those classic, web friend deals that just kind of pyramided out. Is that a bad word here, pyramid? Maybe. But anyway, it was pretty phenomenal. But again, it's very much an honor and privilege to come and be with you today and tell this story. Just as a little background, I am a native Texan. I was born here in Dallas. And on the first part of the video, you'll see me standing out in the yard of where I grew up on Meters Lane in what used to be North Dallas, 5370 Meters Lane. And I think that neighborhood is where a lot of my dreams, at least my childhood dreams, came from and were instilled in me. But I left Dallas, I went to Culver Military Academy, graduated high school up there in Indiana, went to UT Austin. I was in the business school, and I've been in oil and gas and general investments for the last nearly 30 years now. The toughest part of climbing Mount Everest was real basic. It was just making the decision to go. That was so hard. It took me so many months, really years and years. I've been thinking about this since the 80s. But just in the last few months before I left, it was really fine-tuning the team and the size of the team and the makeup of the team, which was actually fairly small. I did not want to go with a group of 10 or 12 or 15 people because I perceive that as higher risk. And I'm in the business of making investments, and I'd like to get my money back primarily. But so I'm always looking at how do you reduce risk. And if you think about it, and the larger the group is, you can only move as fast as the slowest person. Somebody's always going to get sick, and then that sickness can be passed around within the group, affecting the entire pace of the pursuit. Somebody can get injured, and then just tough decisions have to be made. Who is going to take this person down, and how do we do that, and how does it affect everything that's going on the mountain? So I was able to find an expedition leader by the name of Jim Williams from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I'd climbed with him in the past. He's been guiding the 7 summits for 15 years. Those are the 7 highest mountains on the 7 continents. And his good friend, Nima Tashi, who is a Sherpa in Nepal, has summited Mount Everest 9 times. And rather than me climbing with a Western guide or an international mountain guide, I decided that I would climb just with Nima and one other Sherpa. Yes, there's a language barrier issue there, but I knew that he knew his way up and knew his way down, and that his mind wasn't cluttered with politics or anything else that would get in our way or potentially hinder us from getting back. And a successful climb, in my opinion, is not necessarily summiting a peak. It's getting down healthy, coming home healthy. That's the definition of a successful climb. But I'll talk a little more about that later. The tough thing about going, like I said, was deciding to go. The left side of my brain, I sat down and wrote about 100 reasons why I should not do this. And that was really easy to do. But once I turned the right side of my brain on, I came up with about 10 reasons why to do it. In the meantime, my family was saying, look, you can do it. You know, you just need to decide and go do it and just get it over with. Because if you don't do it now, you're probably never going to do it. And so, you know, I listened to the right side of my brain. I listened to my family, and I just made an instinctive decision based on my heart and soul, and went and did it. When I came back, the two most popular words I can remember hearing are congratulations and, like, you know, why in the heck did you do that, or what? And really, quite frankly, I've been very, very fortunate throughout my life to accomplish many dreams that I've had. There are 4 childhood dreams that really stand out, and one of them was playing college football. I always wanted to play college football, but when I got to college, I never picked up the phone. I never tried it. I never called the coach. I never walked out there and asked the question or even gave it a shot, and that always bothered me. And I think that has helped me persevere in a lot of other things in life, where, you know, I get to kind of a tipping point and I say, do I really want to do this or not? You know, it's much easier to just blow it off and go on and do the next thing. I didn't want to be on my deathbed thinking, you know, I should have at least gone and tried Everest, because I really deep down feel like I could do it. I didn't want to put myself in that position, and I still think about not playing college football. Not that I would have lasted. That's not the point. The point is that I never tried, and it's always bothered me. The second childhood dream I can remember as being a downhill, you know, being an Olympic athlete. You know, being what I envisioned as, you know, being a Jean-Claude Keely or someone like that, a downhill racer, and you know, Robert Redford and downhill. You know, that was pretty neat stuff. And I did something better than that in reality. I helped put together an old Olympic event called Skeleton, and many of you have picked up the cards in the back. This book I wrote, it came out in 2005, and it talks actually about mountaineering a little bit in there, but it's about putting together an Olympic program, something that used to be in the Olympics, sliding sport that used to be in the Olympics decades ago, and getting that back into the Olympics for the 2002 Winter Olympics. We built the program. I was a volunteer program director, and we built it like a business, really. And we ended up with 5 athletes winning 2 gold medals and a silver. And the 2 gold medals were 20% of the 10 gold medals that the United States won at the 2002 Olympics, and the 3 medals were about 8 or 9% of the total medal count that the U.S. Won. And, you know, to be the leader in charge of that team and that staff was, you know, in the United States, just a number of months after 9/11, was just absolutely a phenomenal experience. It was so much more multidimensional than what I could have ever imagined, you know, as a child in my dream being a downhill skier. The third childhood dream was climbing Mount Everest, and we'll talk about that. And then my fourth dream was going into space. I grew up with, you know, the Mercury and the Gemini and Apollo programs in the 60s, and I couldn't imagine a more exciting life than to be an astronaut. And I guess reality got in the way of a lot of that pursuit. But what I have done is I've signed up with Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson's space shot that is scheduled to go up, Spaceship Two, scheduled to begin flying in 2010, 2011. Now, my best guess, it probably won't happen until 12, 13, or 14. But I'm patient, and I think that I might get a shot at flying in space. So that's pretty exciting. There's a great quote from Walt Disney, and I love to quote Disney because he made life and work so fun for so many. And it says, all of our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. And that's really what I think I was talking about when I was struggling with the decision to go to Everest. Do I have the courage? Can I admit that, I may not have the courage to go try something like that to myself? But I'm here to reinforce that thought that dreams are for not just children, but for anybody at any age. And, when you think about it, we never stop evolving. We never stop learning. We never stop growing. You're going to have, horrible things happen to you, and you're going to have fantastic things happen to you. But you're growing, and, when you consider, and this is not only regarding individuals, but organizations as well. And you consider people like Armand Hammer, who founded Occidental Petroleum well into his 70s. It's a $5 billion company today. You think about, guys here in Dallas like Boone Pickens, who, in my opinion, has been successful all of his life, but he's paid 90% of his federal taxes in the last 5 years, and he's 80 years old. So, he's living, he's a perfect example of somebody that's been compounding experiences and knowledges over decades, and you never know when it's going to, come to fruition. You think about organizations like Google and Apple and, reinventing themselves constantly. You think about the Federal Reserve Bank. We were touring with Rick here. I saw Rick somewhere around here. Yeah, last week, and it's got to keep reinventing itself in terms of to stay ahead of the counterfeiters. You guys keep looking at how to do new bills better, and it's happening quicker and quicker because of the technology and the counterfeiters they're out there. And, it's just really interesting. And by the way, I really appreciate all the work that y'all do here. I consider this, to me, in my own limited mind, it's the CIA of the financial world. It's just really interesting what goes on here. But, just the fact that each of you are here today, and I appreciate y'all standing up in the back. I wish we could find some more chairs for you. Just the fact that you're here means that you're full of curiosity, you're full of energy, you're growing. And I got to say to every one of you that there's no question in my mind that, your best days are yet to come. There's no question about that. Woody Allen once said, and you've heard this a jillion times, that, 90% of life is just showing up. And so I appreciate y'all coming today. So let me get into the video here. I've had much smaller crowds, by the way. So as you know, as President Fisher pointed out, Everest was first climbed in 1953 by Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. And, it's really, Sir Edmund Hillary was a beekeeper in New Zealand. And you think New Zealand is a remote place today. Think about what it was in the 40s and 50s. And here comes this guy and climbs the highest mountain in the world. It's pretty amazing. But I met Sir Edmund Hillary one time at the Dallas Petroleum Club about 10 or 15 years ago. And I asked him a question, in the question and answer time. I asked him about fear on a mountain. And, he acted like he had no idea what I was talking about. And I guess, just his attitude is he's never been afraid of anything. He didn't think that way. Just like I guess a professional golfer doesn't think about getting nervous over a particular shot. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But in the 54-year history that man has been climbing Everest, there's been about 3,000 people summit. There's been about 200 mortalities on the mountain. You can't calculate and say, oh, there's an 8% chance you're going to die. It's really apples and oranges because people are climbing different routes and they're climbing different seasons. One guy may be climbing, the east face in the wintertime versus the easy way that I went up in the spring. Yeah, I think in the blog I came up with an instinctive percentage of injury or death, and I don't remember what that is, but I think it was probably plus or minus 5% that you could be injured. I'm not talking about death, but injured or worse. I was at base camp at the foot of Everest on the south side, on the Nepal side, for 6 weeks or longer, base camp or higher for 6 weeks. That's at 17,500 feet. At 17,500 feet, you'll love this, you have to consume 8,000 calories a day in order not to lose weight. So I left Dallas, as I said, I left Dallas weighing 177 pounds. After 3 days of drinking beer in Kathmandu on the way out, I weighed in Bangkok at 157. I lost 20 pounds. A lot of it was not only fat, but a lot of it was muscle mass. I know from running marathons and doing triathlons that you burn up muscle mass in the latter stages of those endurance events. And weeks on that mountain, I felt like a 100-year-old man. My arms and my legs were just nothing, but I could take off and run for tens of miles probably, and it wouldn't have fazed me. The oxygen at the summit of Everest, 29,035 feet, there's about 1/3 the amount of oxygen molecules in the air mass as there is at sea level. So, if you flew in an airplane at 29,000 feet and decompressed, everybody would pass out within 30 seconds. But if you slowly acclimate your way up there like we did and drink plenty of fluids, you guys stay hydrated, that's one of the keys, is your body will adapt to it. It's amazing what the human body can adapt to. And I actually felt pretty good up there. It's a 3-day travel time from Dallas to Kathmandu, which is the capital of Nepal. And Kathmandu is a small country, as many of you know, between India and Tibet. And the summit of Everest is the border between Nepal and Tibet. From Kathmandu, we fly into the little village in the Khumbu Valley, which is the valley that runs down south from Everest to a little village called Lukla. Lukla is at about 9,000 feet. So if any of you have flown into Telluride, Colorado, it's like flying into Telluride at 9,000 feet. And we walk about 36 miles from there up a trail. It's not bad walking. It's beautiful. I'd highly recommend it. If you want to do a base camp, Everest Base Camp trek, it's about 3 weeks round trip from Dallas if you ever want to do that. But you walk again 36 miles from about 9,000 feet to 17,500 feet over about 8 days. And you take that long because you don't want to go too high too quickly or overexert yourself. And you want to make sure that you stay hydrated, and that's how you build your foundation for acclimatization for the upper mountain. So a couple things to look out for in the video is when I'm on the trail, I'll say it, it's the first day on the trail, and it's the first time we've seen Everest in the background from the ground level. There's a ridge in front of Everest, and that ridge is called the Nuptse Ridge. It's about 26,000 feet. And you will see that ridge from the summit looking back down. It almost looks like the edge of this podium to me. And to realize that you're looking down at a ridge that's at 26,000 feet is pretty awesome. And you'll see a panorama view on the video today that I took on the summit, 360 degrees, and it was very calm and clear up there. The other people on the summit had come up from the Tibet side, and I think we were only one of 4 or 5 or 6 people from the south side that climbed to the summit that day. My wife and her friend are in a taxi cab in Kathmandu, and I'm joking with them about robbing a bank. That's probably a bad joke here too, because they have bandanas on, and the pollution was so bad in Kathmandu that you literally had to cover your face up in order to breathe. You'll also see an example of an avalanche above base camp. You can hear it. You can see the kind of the plume. And we heard these avalanches and rock falls pretty constantly, day and night, for the 6 weeks that we were up there. You just kind of get used to it after a while. But the one on the video is exceptionally large. Camp 1 is up above the Khumbu ice fall, which is a frozen ice fall, basically. You'll see that. Camp 1's about 19,000 feet. Camp 2's about 21,000 feet. Camp 3 is on the Lhotse face, a very steep face at about 23,000 feet. That's where we went on oxygen, supplemental oxygen. I slept and climbed on supplemental oxygen from Camp 3 up. Camp 4 is on the South Col, which is in a little saddle between Nuptse and Everest, and that's at 26,200 feet. And I left Camp 4 at 8 p.m. and summited at 7 a.m., so we climbed through the night. It was similar to just pacing yourself through wind sprints for about 11 hours, so it's a real mental exercise to get through that. I was on the summit for an hour and 40 minutes. I was not as smart as Hillary and Norgay in that they got up there, tagged the top, and got back on their oxygen and went down. I took my backpack off up there. I was pretty much up there for an hour and 40 minutes without oxygen, without breathing supplemental oxygen. I didn't really realize that till I started down. I was very dehydrated and my oxygen saturation was very low. And it was kind of like the last 30 minutes of a marathon or the last hour of the Ironman for 5 hours coming down. And I can see if the weather got really bad, you know, when you're in that kind of condition, that you could get in a lot of trouble real quick. It's just razor thin on the safety. So, you know, you hear people talk about, oh, Everest isn't that hard and so forth and so on. You hear the other side of it too. Well, let me tell you, it's you got to be on your toes up there, or you can lose it real quick. But again, my goal was not to summit. My goal was to go over there, and I say this in the video, to number one, have fun, and number two, do the best I could do. And that's all you can really do because there's so many uncontrollable factors: sickness, weather, you know, avalanches, ice falls can mess up the route, whatever. There's so much that you can't worry about. You just hope that you can put yourself in a position to summit and the weather cooperates and everything goes. The average person to summit Everest is on their third attempt. And for me to go over there and not get sick and be healthy the whole time and summit on my first attempt is just a blessing. I mean, I don't know, I didn't expect that to happen, but it did. And so I feel very, very fortunate. So in the video, hear the music, enjoy the views, and try to absorb the words and thoughts that are presented. Thank you. Well, as you can imagine, I've seen that about 400 times, but I don't know if it's the passing of Hillary or what, but I actually got a little teary-eyed watching it that time. I also want to give a big hand for Brent Talent behind the cameras over here and Andy Rutland over here with Green Room Productions. They actually produced this DVD. I think they did an outstanding job. Thank you all. I'm sure there are no questions, but I'm happy to answer any. Just raise your hand if you have something. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, your wife is an amazing woman. I don't think I will allow my husband to go up there. I just have a quick question. Why do you decide to climb at night?
Well, you've probably been to Colorado or in the mountains somewhere. You know, it typically tends to, the temperatures rise and it tends to storm up in the afternoons. And a lot of stories that you read about where people get in trouble on mountain and specifically on Everest is they're summiting too late. They're summiting at 1, 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, and that's when the weather comes in, if it's going to come in. It's just a higher risk time. And so we wanted to take our time, but get up there early and get down early. Like I got back to Camp 4, 26-2 about 1:30 in the afternoon. Of course, I'd been up, you know, working hard for 16, 17 hours. But I will say that when I got back to my tent, I climbed in my tent, and I remember sitting there with that red climbing suit on, and I was sitting there on oxygen, and And I was going to take that suit off, and I unzipped about here, and this was about 1:45 in the afternoon, and after a while I woke up, I was on my back, and I looked at my watch, it was like 3:30. I must have just fell over and passed out. And so anyway, it was pretty interesting. Yes. Yes, sir.
What's your answer to the question you asked Sir Hillary?
Oh, I have fear. Yes. I've been in situations on mountains before I asked that question, where I've been skiing in the backcountry and I've been climbing, obviously, in uncontrolled areas, and instinctively you can feel if there's an avalanche danger potential, and every once in a while I'll feel something like that, and I've been trapped on an avalanche slope before with lightning bolts coming down, and you have to actually unhook off the rope so you have no protection if you're avalanche. There's nothing holding you to anyone else, and get away from the rope because a wet rope is a conductor, and so we had to get on this slope and dig in, and if anything moved, you're pretty much gone. And with the rumbling and the thundering and anything the lightning that could set off an avalanche, it was pretty scary. So I've been in one or two conditions or a few conditions like that where I've felt intense fear. And I just, I'm relatively inexperienced compared to someone like Hillary or a professional climber. But so I just asked him, if he ever, something to the effect that, how did he handle himself? What did he think about when he got into a situation like that? He basically didn't even acknowledge that he had ever been fearful in a situation. But yeah, my answer was, I've been very scared. Yes, sir.
How much oxygen did you use on your ascent and on your descent in the mountain?
Well, you probably saw the oxygen bottles. They weigh about 8 pounds each, stacked up at Camp 4. I had about 8 to 10 liters. Those are 1 liter canisters allocated to me. I think there are a couple left over. I don't remember if I had 8 or 10, but there are a couple left over. I actually climbed, when I left Camp 4 and went down, I went all the way to Camp 2. I dropped about 5,000 feet that day. And I actually descended without supplemental oxygen. I felt good, and I didn't want to carry the extra weight. But I think I probably used, there was one night at Camp 3, climbing to Camp 4 that day. That night at Camp 4, and the next night, and then the following day at Camp 4, and then that last night, effectively my third night at Camp 4 or above. So what was that, 5? There's like 5, I use like 8 bottles over 5 days. But you can regulate it. You can, like I slept on like 1, I don't remember what the volume register was, but it was like 1 liter a minute or something like that. And you can turn up on the summit ridge, you're really expending a lot of energy. And I had it up to like 4 liters a minute, something like that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What was your exercise training regimen?
Well, I've been training for this, consciously and unconsciously for 30 years. I ran my first marathon, the Dallas White Rock Marathon in 1980. I've run, I think, 8 marathons and a 9th marathon in the Ironman that I did in Hawaii in 1989. But I used to run and do triathlons to train for mountain climbing. I used to actually climb, as you could tell from some of the slides, that I did some climbing in the 70s and 80s. When I got married and had kids, I got away from it instinctively. And then when my son turned 16, he wanted to go up to the Tetons and climb. So I started taking him up there, and that's where I ran into Jim Williams, and we started thinking about this. But what I did, if you want to get in shape for snow skiing, you go snow ski. That's the best thing you can do. So what I did is in January, basically what I did, or my knees are starting to bother me now. So I'm not on the pavement running as much, but I'm on an elliptical machine, and I'll crank the speed up and the incline up, and I'll go for 1 to 2 hours, getting ready for something like that. Say 3 days a week. I'll do 1 session of yoga a week. I'll do push-ups and sit-ups whenever I can during the week, just trying to build some core strength. And But what I did in January is to make sure that I wanted to go climb Everest, but also as a mental and physical training event, I went down to South America and climbed Aconcagua, which is about 22,850 feet. It's the highest peak in the South American continent, or actually in the Western Hemisphere as well. And that was pretty rough. So that's basically what I did. I didn't go overboard. I didn't, get on the treadmill with 100-pound packs or anything like that. A lot of it, we were talking earlier, a lot of it is not just the physical. You got to be in great cardiovascular shape, and you need good core strength. But a lot of it is in your head. You got to have experience, and you got to know, when to panic and when not to panic, and how to handle others that are panicking because they don't know how to handle themselves in a certain situation. That's a lot of it.
I think that, Robbie's the best prescription for the Federal Open Market Committee. Got to know when to panic and when not to panic.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Richard. That was fun. Great crowd.
I think when I'd been here a couple of months, I sent a note to everybody that they ought to read a book called The Shadow of the Wind, and there's a great passage in there. It says that destiny does not come knock on your front door, you have to go out and seize it. And here's an example of someone that goes out and seizes it. And I noticed in reading through Sir Edmund's obituary this morning, one of the interesting things was, first, his son and Torge's son they managed to summit as well. So we'll see if Robert and Browning are able to do the same thing.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
his
see.
son and his daughter. And the second thing is when Robbie told you about going up into space, the other thing about Sir Edmund that's interesting, he not only was able to summit Everest, he's the only person that was able to summit Everest and also walk to the South Pole, and then with Neil Armstrong fly in a single-engine plane to the North Pole. So when you dream, you can get things done. Having said that, I want you all to dream about going back to work. Thank you very much.
I need to do that too. Thanks a lot.